Alrighty, everybody. Welcome. I hope everyone enjoyed their Memorial Day weekend. Just as Erica said, we're going to be talking about access and workflow today, which is everyone's favorite topic. So I'm sure that we'll have a lot to cover today, and hopefully you guys will learn quite a bit and have good questions and all that sort of thing. So let me just go ahead and share my screen. We'll start off with some very short PowerPoints, and then we'll launch into the demo. All right, so our agenda for today, we are going to just kind of cover some basic terminology right at the onset, so we're kind of understanding when I have throw around a couple key terms what those mean. I'll briefly talk about inheritance and precedence, which is an important concept to understand while we discuss access and workflow. And then I'll just kind of show two very quick examples of kind of configuring access settings and workflow in more complex manners. So we'll be talking about kind of configuring access settings from a top-down perspective, which is the best practice we encourage, as well as an example of how you can make a complex workflow work in your site. And we'll spend most of our time in a live demo, and we'll wrap up with Q&A. But if you've been to one of these before, you know that I like to answer questions as I go as well. So if you do have questions, feel free to post them, and if I can get to them before the end, I will absolutely do that. So let's talk about some key terms. So some key terms to understand, you're going to hear the word access thrown around quite a lot today. When we talk about access settings or just access in OU Campus, we're typically referring to who can go where inside of your site. So it's just a matter of, I have this one particular user, let's figure out which areas of your site they will actually have access to in order to go to those pages, update that content, potentially even publish those pages. How access is controlled in OU Campus is through groups, which is why we essentially have groups in the first place inside OU Campus. So you put your users in your groups, you assign your groups to those particular areas of your site, and that controls which users can go where. A kind of a subset almost of access is a concept that we call permissions. And permissions is slightly different. It's not who can go where in your site, it's who can do what in your site. An example would be, which users you want to give the ability to upload files into the system, or, delete pages and send them to the recycle bin. And this is not controlled through groups. This is controlled by whatever user level your user has been created at. If you're unfamiliar with user levels in OU Campus, we have 11 user levels ranging from level 0, which pretty much has very few permissions, to a level 10, which is an administrator with all the permissions. Normally we'll have some sort of gray area in between there, level 6 users, level 8 users, level 4 users, and those will have varying levels of permissions, which will enable them to do different things in OU Campus. And then finally, we have the concept of workflow, and this is kind of a complete change from access and permissions. It's not really who can go where or who can do what. It's who can publish what specifically. And this is controlled through a kind of a combination of users and or groups. By creating approval workflows, what you can do is you can restrict certain users from being able to publish pages inside of OU Campus, and that's a feature that's inherent to all users. The way that you would prevent someone from publishing is you would assign them an approver, which is another user in the system who would have to review anyone's changes before they could be published to the live production server. So those are kind of our three key terms. We'll talk about all three of them, so just make sure that we kind of understand the differences between them. Another concept that's important is the concept of inheritance and precedence. If you worked in OU Campus, pretty much any, you know that there are a lot of different levels at which you can configure some of these administrator-type access settings. And when we talk about inheritance and precedence, those levels form a hierarchy. And the beginning of the hierarchy, or the beginning things, it's where you kind of assign your initial permissions, your initial workflow settings at the user level. but then you continue to configure them to your sites and to the directories within your sites and the pages within your directories and the editable regions within your pages, you see that there's a hierarchy. Certain things are parents of other things, and other things are sort of children of other things. And in that way, the access settings that you set at these higher levels of the hierarchy, such as a site-wide access setting, for example, those are going to trickle down to directories, pages, editable regions, unless there's another setting farther down the line that overwrites that. So if you're familiar with CSS by any means, that sort of idea of cascading permissions, that's pretty much how it works in OU Campus as well. If you set something at the site level, but then you have a different value set for that at the directory level, the directory level is going to weigh out because it's more specific, and it gets you closer to the end goal of the actual content itself. So whatever access setting that is closest to the content is going to overwrite any of the more general settings that have been made at a higher level in that hierarchy. So now let's talk about, really quickly, access settings. We're kind of assuming that you all are at least moderately familiar with access settings. We'll be covering the entire process, all the way from pretty much starting fresh to making some advanced things work. But I want to talk about this kind of top-down method that I mentioned before. So say, for example, you have an athletics directory that's off of the root of your site, and you want to control who can actually get into your athletics directory and the pages and directories that reside within it. So, you have your folder, and then you have another group, and that group is called athletics. And that group is going to contain all of the users that you want to be able to get into that particular directory. And you have, say, for example, an index page in that athletics folder. And that index page has another group that's assigned to it in terms of its access group, and that group is called Athletics Administrators. All of the users that belong to the Athletics Administrators group would also have to belong to that parent athletics group so they could get into the athletics folder in the first place, which would then enable them to get to the index page. Say you have there's a couple other folders in here, a baseball folder, you would assign a baseball group to it. So the users within the baseball group could get to the parent athletics folder and then also the baseball group as well. So that kind of is what we're talking about when it comes to top-down. When you are planning out your access settings, you want to start from the files that are at the top of your site, and you want to say, okay, here are all the users that I want to be able to get into this big folder, and then once you finish that, you kind of move down to the next level of the hierarchy and say, okay, what subset of users do I want to give access to this particular page or this particular subdirectory, and so on and so forth. So I'll kind of show you more in detail what that looks like once we launch into the demo. And now let's kind of switch gears and talk about a flexible workflow. So flexible workflows are also really important. You may, have a really simple situation where you have one user and they have to submit a page to submit any page to just a higher level user or their manager or something along those lines, and that's pretty much all you have. No matter where they go, they're going to have to submit that page to that particular user. But you can get extra fancy with it. So, take this example. I have a user named with Anna, and Anna, at her user level, she has an approver. And that approver is called Bob, so that means anywhere that Anna goes inside of the site, she will have to submit that page to Bob for approval, which would mean then Bob gives it the okay and then gets the page published. But then say, for example, Anna is working inside of the alumni directory, you can assign approvers to an entire directory. And what that's going to do is it's going to overwrite the setting that we had set for Anna initially. So maybe we have an approver by the name of Christine assigned to the alumni directory. That means that anytime Anna or any other user goes into the alumni directory, all of those users are going to send their pages to Christine for approval instead of Bob or anybody else. So then Christine's going to be the one to look at it and then publish it. Say finally, We have Anna. She's actually a faculty member at this university, so she has her own faculty profile page. Well, since this is her own information and she might just need to do something basic like updating her office hours, it's not necessary for her to have to submit that to an approver. So what we can do is we have this setting that's called a bypass approval group. This is where groups come into play when we talk about workflow. This bypass approval group, she could be a member of it, which just means that if you're a member of the bypass approval group, you do not have to submit that particular page to any sort of approver, even if you have one set at your user level. In this case, it would be Bob. So if Anna's working on her faculty page in particular, and this page only, she's able to edit it and publish it all by herself. What's really cool is that you can have all three of those situations happen at the same exact time. So that's what we hope to achieve today in terms of what we can be showing you, how we can set up workflow. So let's go ahead and just kind of see these things in real time as we work on them inside of a site. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I am logged into my test environment right here. I am a level 10 administrator in my system. So at this point, what I have is I essentially have a site that has no access settings applied to it, but it's been built out. As you can see, I've got quite a few directories off of my root. You know, I've got all sorts of pages and folders and everything along there. So my site is built out content-wise, but now I just need to sort of start bringing in my users and making sure that they can only get to the right places. So the first thing that we suggest when you're kind of right at the onset here is talk about it from a very site architecture level. You don't need to launch into the details right immediately now. Give yourself some time to kind of plan out what you want to do before you start building stuff out inside the system. So inside the reports menu, we have a couple really important custom reports that are really useful in this practice. Inside custom reports, you've got quite a few that you can run. The two that are most important at this point are the directories report and the pages report. What the directories report is going to do is it's going to give you a list of all of the directories inside of your site. I click my report, I can just run a path, and then at this point, I don't really have anything else because I don't have any access settings, I don't have any approvers or anything along those lines. So I'm just going to actually get a report of all of the directories in my site. I can click Run, and as you can see, it returns a whole lot of information. I have pages upon pages of different files in here, which is fine. That's all I really need. What I can be doing at this point is I can export a CSV copy of this, and what we recommend is you do the same. You kind of run this directories report, run an export. I've got my CSV pulled up here, and what you can start doing is you can just start making a list of, okay, here's my about directory. What should I be able to do this? I know that Bob and Steve and Brandon and all of these people need to get access to the files that are inside the about directory. And then I can just kind of start moving along the line saying, okay, these users need to be in these directories. You might get duplicates like this. You can remove that in the CSV. That's just because I have an index page, so it gets a little bit confusing here. But all you can do is just start writing out, okay, these users need to go here, these users need to go here, these other users need to be in this folder, and you can just move on and on and on throughout that so you can get a good picture of who needs to be where. Once you've done that, that's when you can start moving on to the next step, which is creating groups based upon this information. We're kind of assuming that you already have your users imported into the system. So I won't need to save that right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Set Up Groups, and I'm going to start creating, well, first of all, let's go to Users. What I've done already before the Training Tuesday started is I have these 3 test users right here, level 4, level 6, and level 8. And these are just, some basic test people that I've created so we can kind of see this in action. If I go to like my level 4 user, for example, you can notice that that's their username is based upon their user level. Obviously, not your people are probably going to have actual names, but what I've done is I've created a couple of different user levels. So this one's a level 4, level 6 is going to be a level 6 user, level 8 is going to be a level 8 user. I've given them all of their just kind of generic permissions. So this is kind of the default thing. You'll see that there's a lot of permissions that I can grant these users, but I'm choosing not to right now, just so we can kind of see the default behavior. And that's really all I have. What I'm going to go ahead and do is I am going to put these users into groups. So I'm going to go to Set Up Groups now that my users have been created. And I'm going to click New to make a new group, and I'm going to call this group Faculty. So the reason why I'm calling this group Faculty is because it's a best practice to create groups based upon the names of the directories that you're actually assigning those groups to inside of your site. And it just makes it really easy. I'm editing the access settings for the academics group. I'm going to give the I'm editing the access settings for the academics directory. I'm going to assign the academics group to that directory, just because there's a one-to-one relationship there. It's easy to understand. So in today's example, we're going to be working in the faculty folder. So I'm going to make a group called Faculty. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to add all 3 of my test users into that group, and then I'll click Save. So now I've got my first group. And if we just open a new tab here really quickly, inside of Faculty, you'll notice that I have all of my faculty departments here. I just know that inside the biology group, there's a file called smaxwell, and it's actually relating to Sean Maxwell, which happens to be the same name as my fake level 4 user. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another access group that gets me into this biology folder. So I'm going to take my faculty group and just copy it. This is just the easiest way to do it, especially if you have a lot of users, because as you can see, it pre-populates my group members from the first group already. So instead of having to re-add them from the available list, I can just remove one of these from the group members. I'm going to call this the biology department. And I'll just remove the level 8 user from this group. So it's pretty much the same, but the only difference is that one user who could get into the faculty folder in the first place will not be able to get into the biology department subfolder. And then underneath that, I'm going to make another group, which is actually going to be a group of 1 called Sean Maxwell. And I'm just going to remove my level 6 user from there. So that means that I have a group named Sean Maxwell, and it only contains the actual user named Sean Maxwell. This is called a group of 1, and it has kind of a unique place in OU campus. Groups of 1 are useful because there may be situations in which you only want to give one user access to a particular page, but the way that access works in the system is that you're only controlling access through groups. So you can't just have a checkbox full of all of your users and say, I want this user to be able to use it and nothing else. So essentially the way that we use groups to get around that is we just create a group that contains one user. So it's kind of an extra step, but luckily when you do create users, you have the ability to create what's called a group of 1 at the same time as you make the user in the first place. I just didn't do that because I wanted to show it here. So now I have 3 groups. Got the faculty group, and that reflects everyone who will be able to get into the faculty directory in the first place. I have the biology department, which reflects the users who can get into the biology subdirectory. And then finally, I have a group called Sean Maxwell, which is just the user who will be able to get to that smaxwell.pcf file, which resides within the biology department. So I've got those groups. That's great. Let's see, do I need to make any more groups? I do not believe so. Okay, so the next step is I'm actually going to go back to my users because I also want to start configuring my workflow. And workflows, actually, sorry, before I talk about workflow really quickly, there is one question from Mark Pastor. He's asking, is a group of one considered best practice? Can it get unwieldy if not managed properly? My answer to that is yes. A group of one is considered a best practice because there is no other way to give access to a file to just one user unless you make a group of one. So there's really kind of no other way to do it. So in that way, it is a best practice. But if you don't have a situation in which you need to grant a single person access to one file, then you don't necessarily need it. In terms of can it get unwieldy if not managed properly, I suppose the only thing that I can think of that would cause it to be unwieldy at all is that you'll just start getting a lot of different groups inside of your groups list view. So, it's just, I guess, a little bit, it gets a little bit more cluttered in that way. But past that, there's really no other danger that that you have when it comes to making groups of one. So I would, under most circumstances, I'd recommend it. But, like I said, if there's no situation where you really are going to need it, then obviously you don't need to do it. So when it comes to creating workflow, the first place where you actually start defining who can publish what is actually here at the user level. So I may have created all three of my test users here, but right now they all have the inherent ability to publish everything by themselves. But under most circumstances, if you're in a real life institution, the website, you're probably not going to want all of your lower level users to be able to publish things by themselves. You want to have some sort of approval process, so there's some accountability there. So what we're going to do is we're going to start assigning a workflow situation. So I'm here in Sean's site, or my Sean's user account. Into my user level, you can see it's a level 4, but it has an approver setting right here. And the approver says it has no approver right now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say that Sean is going to have to submit his pages to the level 6 user for approval, therefore preventing him from being able to publish things all by himself, which increases some accountability that I want there. I'm also going to click the Enforce Approver checkbox, which is going to enforce that it's always going to be set to level 6. If I didn't choose this checkbox, then Sean would have to send it to somebody, and the default person would be level 6, but he could just go into a drop-down menu and choose any of these other users as well, which we don't want in this situation. We want it to always be enforced to sent to level 6. So what I'm just going to do is I'm going to do that, enforce the approver there, and then I'll save. So now we've established the beginning part of a workflow. We have another question about groups of one from Paul, and he's asking, is there a problem in IDing groups of one by prefixing the name, like in his example, U_Sean Maxwell? There's not necessarily a problem. You may run into an issue, I can't remember off the top of my head now, if underscores are acceptable in group names. If not, then there wouldn't be a problem about it. The only issue is that when you create groups of one automatically when you make a new user, it will take whatever the username is. So in my examples, level 4, level 6, and level 8, that's going to be their usernames in the group of one that's created automatically. But if you create them manually, you can give them whatever name you want. So there shouldn't be any problem as long as it's an acceptable group name and you're not, you're not breaking OU Campus by trying to inject a character that it doesn't accept. But like I said, off the top of my head, I don't remember if underscore is acceptable or not, but I know that, for example, like dash would probably be fine. So you could do U-Sean Maxwell if the underscore didn't work. So just, test that out. If it doesn't work, then you can change the character you use, but there would be no problem IDing a group of one by prefixing the name. So moving on with my next part of the workflow, but say, for example, my level 6 user still isn't the ultimate person I want to have be the person to approve everything, to publish everything. We have one level of approval, but what if we wanted to have a second layer of approval applied to it? So what I can do is I can go to my level 6 user, as you can see. It's a level 6. And I'm going to change my approver for this one, to my level 8 user, and I'm going to enforce that. So that means anytime that my level 6 user goes in and edits a page, they're still going to have to send it to their level 8 user. And that also means that anytime level 4 sends a page to level 6, level 6 is going to still have to forward it off to level 8. So all of these files are going to ultimately come to my level 8 user as opposed to being able to be published one step through the way. So if you want to set up a multi-level approval situation like this, it's definitely possible. It can introduce some complexities, but it's definitely possible. So now level 4 sends to level 6 sends to level 8, and if I edit this, I just want to confirm that level 8 does not have an approver, so he will be able to publish all of his stuff by himself completely. So that's exactly how I want it right there. The next thing I want to do is we can also assign toolbars to our users. If you've worked in the WYSIWYG editor in OU Campus before, you know that, actually here, let me just show you really quickly. If I work in this, and I enter my editable region, you can see I've got all these options available to me inside of my WYSIWYG toolbar. However, some of these options, such as viewing the HTML source code of that region, or maybe changing font families or font sizes, those might be features you don't want to give to your lower level users because you don't trust that they're going to use it correctly, which is a very valid concern. So what we've added in OU Campus is the ability to assign custom toolbars to your users, which can restrict the toolbar options that are available to them. So I've already gone in and I've created a toolbar, a custom toolbar that corresponds to every user level in my system. So all of my level 4 users in the site, for example, are going to be given the level 4 toolbar, which restricts the available choices that they have inside of the WYSIWYG editor. And same thing for level 6 and level 8, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to actually go through again, and I'm going to assign the correct toolbars to my users as well. So my level 4 user is going to get the level 4 toolbar. My level 6 user is going to get the level 6 toolbar. And my level 8 user is going to get the level 8 toolbar. And just as the user levels increase, the available options inside of these custom toolbars will also increase. The higher your level, the more responsibility you're assumed to have, and therefore the more options that we're going to give you in the toolbar. We have a question from Sai, and they're asking, where are we assigning permissions for groups to certain folders? You are almost one step ahead of me. We will be talking about that momentarily, but what we want to do first, before we assign permissions, access to certain folders, we want to make sure that we're setting up our groups and our users in the first place correctly, and then we can launch in to start assigning access groups in certain places. But we'll be doing that in a couple different places. So, okay, now I've assigned my toolbars, I've assigned my approvers to my users. Now let's go ahead and, oh, you know what? Apologies really quickly here. I did want to create one more group, and this one's going to be called Campus Life to correspond with the Campus Life folder that's off of my root. And I'll explain why I'm making this other group here later on. I just want to make sure that I have it here. Okay, great. So now what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to start assigning access using the groups that we've just created. So I'm going to kind of hop onto a couple of really easy ones first of all, and then we'll start launching into the big kahuna, which is actually access settings for your directories inside of your site. But there are a couple places where you can also configure access settings that don't deal with that. So the first place is inside of your setup menu. There's a couple places where you can control who can use what. when we talk about like social media publishing, you have the ability to potentially send out a Facebook post or a tweet to a configured Facebook account when you publish pages. Say, for example, each one of the departments inside of your university has its own Facebook page. So like in this example, I've got one for the art department. What I can do is once I've linked this in with OU Campus, which I've already done, I can edit this Facebook page, and this little available to setting right here is saying, hey, which users do you want to give the ability to actually publish to this Facebook page? And as we would probably assume, I only want members of the art department to be able to publish pages to the art department Facebook page. So I'm going to change my available to group from level 10 administrators only, which is the default, to the art department. So therefore, if I'm a user inside of the art department and I publish a page, I have the ability to send out a Facebook post that will show up on my art department Facebook page at the same time. So there's that example. I have this other training account. I'll just, for the heck of it, assign it to the biology department, just as another example there. So we've portioned those out. The next place I'm going to go is I'm going to go to Set Up Gadgets. And inside the Gadgets list view, we've got our list of all of the gadgets that are available to me. What I can do is I can also configure who can use these gadgets. So if you have a particular gadget that you only want higher level users to use, for example, I'm going to use my Notes gadget, for example. I can click on the Access menu right here, and I can change the Available To setting. So instead of it being a gadget that's available to everyone, I'm going to say that it's available to administrators only. So that means that only level 9 and 10 admins are going to be able to actually go into the gadget sidebar and use my Notes gadget. We got a question from Matt, and he's asking, how does this work if someone republishes a page? It would not automatically hit Facebook again, would it? And it wouldn't. You have to physically essentially press a button that says, hey, publish this to Facebook. If you want, Matt, when we get to the point of kind of after we've set up access settings and I'm kind of demoing how it all works once it's all been set up, remind me, and I will just show you what it looks like to actually send a Facebook post. But no, every time you publish it, you have to physically go in and say, hey, I want a Facebook post to be sent to it. It's not turned on by default. We have another question from Paul, who's asking about gadgets. What if I want a gadget to be available to several groups, but not everyone? This is where groups can kind of get pretty crazy, because unfortunately there's no way to assign access to anything to several groups at one time. The way to get around that is you just take all of the users that belong to those several groups and then create a new group for it and then assign that gadget to that new group. So in example, say I have all of my members of the biology department and the art department. I want both of those groups of people to be able to use one of my gadgets. I would just make a new group, which I might call like the Notes gadget or something like that, just so it's very clear what that group is created for. And then I would put the users that belonged to the biology group and the art group, and I'd put them in this new Notes gadget group, and then I'd assign the Notes gadget group to that inside of the whatever it's called, inside of the gadget setting. So hopefully that makes sense. Unfortunately, there's no way to assign several groups that already exist. You just have to make a new group and put those users in there. So there's a way to do it. It's just one extra step. So moving on, the other place I'm going to go is set up templates. This is where you can do a lot of really powerful stuff, because when it comes to templates, which are the things that you have in order to create new web pages in your site, each one of those templates can have access settings applied to them. So what I can do is, for all of these groups that say news section right here, what I want to do, instead of allowing everyone to create new files or new sections, I might want to be extra specific about it. I don't want my level 4 users, for example, to be creating new web pages just willy-nilly because, you know, they might create a whole bunch of files that we don't need and aren't good and aren't accessible, or, you know, any of those reasons. So I want to make sure that I'm restricting that. So what I can do is I can go into my access settings and I can, you know, restrict that ability. So for example, I have this group that I've pre-created called content creators, which is, you know, maybe just a list of people who I've given explicit permission, like, hey, you can make new web pages. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply the content creators access group to all of my templates, which means that no matter what user I am, no matter where I am, if I'm not part of the content creators group, I will have no ability to create new pages whatsoever, which a lot of people are happy about because then you don't have like a student worker, for example, roll in and just because they're curious about how OU Campus works, they make 5 new web pages, and then you have just a whole bunch of cluttered stuff that doesn't actually need to be there sitting on your staging server. So this is kind of the first step. We recommend that you restrict your template access to just the people that you want explicitly to have that permission. Another thing, if you want to restrict access even further, there's kind of 2 subsets of templates in the system. There is one that just creates like a new web page. So say, for example, this interior.tcf right here, it will just create a new interior web page. Pretty simple. But if I go up here, I have another template called section.tcf, and it's going to create a new section, which is essentially a new subfolder, complete with an index file and a navigation file and all this sort of stuff. You know, that's a little bit more involved. It's going to create a subdirectory in your entire site. If you want, we've seen customers in the past further restrict access to your section templates. So I could potentially say only administrators can create new subfolders in my site. You know, I can have more people just create standard pages, but when it comes to making a new subsection, oh man, we have to talk to an admin about that. So I have this one called News Section. That's still going to create a new subfolder. I'll put that one to admins only. Subsite Blog, you know, it's got this little folder icon, so I know that it's going to create a new section. Scrolling down here, let's see, new faculty section. There's another one, administrators only. There we go. So that's what I can do there. I can restrict those section templates specifically to being administrators only, or just, you know, some more restrictive group there. It doesn't have to be admins only. I'm just using that as an example. So we'll save that. That's great. I've just as a reference, template groups, those will come into play later. I've already made out a bunch of template groups, so we'll be talking about those in just a second here. So now that we've kind of assigned access to some of those ancillary things, let's go into the big kahuna, set up sites, and now we're going to start applying access settings to the content in our site. So the way to do that, you hover over the site in question. I've got this one right here. In the Edit menu, you have a couple options. There's Site Access, there's Asset Access, and then there's also Tag Access. Really quickly, I'm just going to talk about tag access. It's kind of its own little separate thing. It doesn't really come into play with like groups and users and all that stuff that we've just spent a bunch of time talking about. But it's a new feature. It was released with version 10.4 as part of tag management. So I feel like it's kind of important that I plug it really quickly. So under Edit, Tag Access, essentially what tags are pieces of metadata and taxonomy that you can apply to files inside of OU Campus that make it easier to find the files that you want inside of OU Campus. So it's mostly kind of an internal system as opposed to being external metadata. What you can do with this as an administrator is you can apply what are called fixed tags, which are going to be tags that will be pre-added to all of the pages inside of your site. In this example, since I'm doing site tag access, that means that it's going to be things that will apply to the entire site. And then there's also filtered tags, which is what I can do is I can say, hey, when you're adding new tags to your site, or when you're adding new tags to the files within your site, for example, you're only going to be able to choose between, these 4 pre-approved tags, like training, academics, athletics, and OU campus, or, whatever. So in this example, when I'm going to another page inside of my site and I want to add some tags, I'm only going to be able to choose between these 4. I wouldn't be able to just go in and type my own. Conversely, you could also disallow specific tags. So if there's specific tags that are like bad words or something that you don't want to be used, you could potentially disallow them in there. But anyways, that's kind of a quick little aside from the majority of what we're talking about here. So actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm actually going to just apply some fixed tags to my site. So what I've done here is under update options, you typically, when it comes to adding configuring options at the site level, within your site you have all these directories and all of your pages. What you can do is you can apply that what's essentially recursively throughout all of the subdirectories and subpages inside of your site, which is what I'm doing with this radio button that says apply selected settings to all existing files and folders in the site. It does exactly what it tells you to do. I am going to be applying these fixed tags, and they're going to populate down to all the existing files and all of the existing folders inside of my site. So I'm just going to add the fixed tag of training, and actually training Tuesdays. We'll apply those 2 fixed tags to all of the existing files and folders in my site. And we'll hit save. So we've just done that. That's just a small thing there. Secondly, I'm going to go ahead and go to my asset settings. So with assets, you can apply access settings to those just as you would a subdirectory off of the rest of your site. And this is going to control who can actually go into the asset manager inside of your site. So I'm going to click on that, and we're going to see a couple options here. First of all, I'm going to apply it recursively, just as I did with the tag access, and it's going to apply to any new assets I create, but also to the existing assets that already exist, because obviously I don't have enough time to create a whole bunch of new assets as an example. So what I can do is, by default, anyone who's a level 4 user and above can get into the asset manager, but perhaps you want to restrict that because, maybe not everyone who's a level 4 and above really deserves to be able to create assets inside of your site. So you can go to your access group setting, which is going to say, hey, who can get here? And I'm just going to go to that same content creators group that has the ability to create web pages. So, the logic would probably follow that if you have enough responsibility vested in you to create new web pages on your site, then you could probably also be able to create assets. But scrolling down, you can also see that you can control the specific types of assets that users can create as well. So I've gone in here and I've not added any additional permissions to web content assets or plain text assets or anything like that. But source code assets, that's something I probably want to restrict because it's very unlikely that everyone inside my content creators group knows JavaScript, for example. But, maybe I have a web developer who's an admin in the system, so I want to make sure that they can still create them. So that's why I've gone into my source code assets, and in this drop-down menu, I've just chosen administrators only. So that means that only administrators are going to be able to create source code assets in my site. Maybe I could restrict that to form assets as well. So, if I'm a level 6 user who's inside of the content creators group, I can go in and I can make web content assets, I can make plain text assets, I can make image galleries, all those just fine, but I wouldn't be able to make some of these more advanced things like source code assets or forms, something along those lines. So that's great. We'll go ahead and save. The final thing I'm doing at the site level is I'm going to be adjusting my site access. So what we're going to go ahead and do is I am going to make my changes recursive. Once again, we're going top down from here. So because I'm making these changes recursive, I'm going to apply any of the settings that I'm choosing down here to everything that's in my site, all existing files, all existing folders. This is great for my example because I know that I have a blank slate for my site, but before you go out and do this in your own sites, remember that if you do have access settings already and you try to change something recursively at the site level, you would be effectively wiping out all of those access settings for all of the files and folders within your site. So I would say if it's an established site that already has some access settings applied to it, tread carefully because you could potentially wipe out a lot of hard work that you've done in the past. So in my example, I'm just going to do it like this to show you best practices from the get-go. But when you're doing it yourself, just make sure you remember that recursive modification is very powerful and could potentially wipe some stuff out. So what I'm going to do, this is a very common best practice that we recommend, is I'm going to change my access group for the site, which means the root of the site, everything from http:/school.edu, anything from that point onwards, I'm going to restrict that to administrators only. The logic behind this is that it's very rare for non-administrator users to have the need to really go to more than really like 1 or 2 folders off of the root of a site. So you can just start off by making it administrators only at the root, and then when we go into our next step and adjust the access settings for the directories that exist right off of the root, then you can go back in and be more specific about who can go where from there. So my access group is administrators only. I'm going to do that right there. Then I am going to change my template group from default. Oh, you know what? I actually did not create that yet. So this is another thing that I forgot about briefly. I'll just hop back and do it now. By default, you can, let's go into my other tab here. By default, when I'm at the root of the site, I still have this new button, which allows me to create new content off of my site. And if I click it now, I have the option to create a whole bunch of web pages that exist just right off of the root. So I'd get something like school.edu / apply now or something like that. But it's very rare that you're really going to actually want to make web pages that exist right off of the root. It's more common for those to nest inside of, directories that exist right off the root. So one thing that we recommend is actually making a template group, which I'm going to just make right now, that we call the site root, and only create the template that it has make a new section with an index page. So instead of being able to create web pages that exist right off the root, I'm just going to be able to make more directories right off of the root, and then I can create web pages inside of those new directories. And also I'll just have the option to create a new folder, which will just give me a new empty folder. So this is something that we recommend. It just makes things a little bit easier, prevents people from accidentally creating web pages that exist right off of the root of your site. So I've got this site root template group. Let me just go ahead, see if I can. Going to have to refresh, unfortunately, here. So I'll just cancel really quick. Okay, let's go back to this. Admins only. And then under the template group, I'm now going to choose site root, which means that only things on the site root are going to be able to make a new folder, and that's it. And that's all I want right there. Okay, great. We'll click Save. There we go. So now our next step is I'm going to go into the Pages list view now, and I'm going to go ahead and start adjusting the access settings for these particular files that exist right off of my root right here. So what I first want to do is I want to make sure that I have some places where users can store some binary files, and this is a part where it's slightly up to personal preference. we've seen it kind of both ways. A lot of schools will have a big images folder that sits right off of the root of their site, which is where all of the images in their entire site reside. So this is what I have here in my example. I've got this images folder, and if I click in it, you can see that I've already got a few images in here. We also see people create images folders that exist kind of off of every subdirectory. So, in this example, I have an admissions folder. I could go in and make a new folder here and just call it images. And then I'd store my admission-specific images inside of this folder, for example. So it's kind of either way. It's up to personal preference which way you want to do it. I think that we tend towards creating just a big images folder off of the root. Makes it a little bit easier to know exactly where the images are going to be just from like the get-go. But what I want to do on that folder, I want to adjust some access settings. So first of all, I want to change my access group away from administrators only. I'll assign it to that good old content creators group. So, if you can create a web page, you can probably also upload an image. So that's kind of the principle that I'm applying there. And what we can also do is we can enforce what are called extensions. So this is going to limit people's ability to upload whatever file they want. They're only going to be able to upload a particular file with a particular extension, or one of a group of extensions. So since this is my images folder, I can then start saying, hey, you can only upload images in here. It's a novel concept, I know. But say, for example, now I'm only allowing JPEGs, PNGs, GIFs, or GIFs, whatever side of the debate you're on, and bitmaps into this folder. If I try to upload like a PDF into images, it's not going to work. So I'll just click Save here. That works. Christopher has a question about images. He's asking, do images auto-resize when you place them into a template? The answer to that's pretty complex. The short answer is no, but essentially what I'm talking about now doesn't even relate to images placing images on a page or in a particular template already. We're just talking about uploading them into the system in the first place so that they can be used on a page. But typically, the answer is no, images won't auto-resize when you place them onto a page, but perhaps your site's design will do that. You could have some CSS in there that just automatically makes sure that all images that you place into your page are going to fill the width of that container, unless that makes it too large or something like that. Additionally, in addition to an images folder, it might be a good idea to have a documents folder where you're storing all of your PDFs and things like that. And what's really important to know about PDFs is that they're kind of prone to having accessibility issues if they're not created right in the first place. So we recommend restricting the ability to upload PDFs into your site to someone who we know is going to actually upload an accessible one, as opposed to just some sort of junky one that's going to cause all sorts of accessibility issues if you start hosting it on your site or something like that. So I'm going to just make a documents folder. And there it is. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit the access settings for it. We can see that it already has the administrators only access group applied to it, and that's because it inherited that value from the site settings that we already set. And inside of extensions, I'm only going to allow the good old document extensions. So PDF, docs, perhaps we'll allow Word documents as well, docx, and then maybe PowerPoints too. You kind of get the idea. So we're going to enforce those extensions to be applied to those particular directories, and we'll hit save. Now, kind of the corollary to what I've done for the images and the documents is that you want to make sure that users can't upload those things and everywhere else inside of your site. So what I probably should have done at the site level at first is I should have at the site level disallowed those extensions, so all of my PDFs, my documents, my Word files, my PowerPoints, and then all of my image extensions. I should have disallowed that at the site level and made it happen recursively, because now what I would have to do is I'd have to go to like all of the folders off of my root, and then I would go down to extensions right here, and I would have to disallow all of my document and image extensions there, so people couldn't upload PDFs to just any other folder that they wanted. So just as an example, I'm actually in my faculty directory right here, and what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to start assigning access settings to this folder. So inside of Access Group, I'm going to change it from Administrators Only. If you remember, I created that faculty group, so I'm going to apply my faculty group to the faculty directory. So therefore, everyone can get into the faculty directory that we would probably hope can get in there. Inside of the faculty directory, I'm also going to assign an approver here. So what this is doing is it's going to overwrite whatever approval settings you have set at your user level. So if I'm coming in and I have an approver that sends, that means that I have to send my pages to Bob over there, something like that, whatever I would set here in my approval is going to overwrite that. So instead of Bob, I'm going to go to Christine or something like that, So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to send it to my admin level. So maybe you have one particular user who's like the ultimate arbiter of whether pages are good to go for the faculty directory or something like that. So I'm just going to set that. I'm just going to set that right there at the faculty level, and I'm going to enforce that as well. Underneath template group, now I don't want it to be the site root, because then I'm not able to create any faculty profile pages. So I'm going to change my template group to the faculty template group, which is going to contain the templates that are specifically geared towards my faculty directory. So when I'm in this particular folder, I'm only going to make faculty pages, which is exactly what we want. Then I could go in here on extensions, and I could, disallow PDFs and documents and docx's and JPEGs and the other way to spell JPEG and GIFs and bitmaps and PNGs. And I've chosen disallow the extensions, so that means I can't upload any files that have these extensions into that folder, for example. So I'll click Save. There we go. And then finally, one more, Campus Life. If you remember, I had that Campus Life directory in there. I'm going to assign the Campus Life group to the Campus Life directory. Once again, that makes sense. And inside of the template group, I'm going to change it from site root to something like default, which will just give me default interior pages, which is just what I want because it's a standard interior section. Okay, we'll hit Save there. Now we're going to go into the faculty directory and do one more level. There's subdirectories inside of here. Let's adjust those. Access settings for the biology department. Make my changes recursive. You can see that once again the access group is faculty because it trickled down from the parent. Now I'm going to change it from faculty to specifically the biology department group goes to the biology folder. Once again, hopefully that makes sense. We'll keep the approver the same. You can see that my extensions have now populated through. My template group, I'm going to change it to another template group that I have called Faculty Department. So you would assume that once I'm inside of a department, I don't need to make another sub-department inside of that department. So I've just made another template group that only allows me to make more standard faculty pages. So, if you gain a new faculty member in the bio department, you can make that, but you can't make a subset of biology, which I can't even think of an example of what that would be. Like, I don't know, human biology specifically, or like zoology or something, I don't know. So we'll save there. I have an art department as well. I can just go ahead and change that. My access group here is going to be the art department. Wonderful. We'll hit save. Cool. So now, one more step. Going inside the biology department, remember we have Sean Maxwell's page. I'm going to edit the access settings for that particular page now. You'll notice that the recursive modification option goes away now. That's because, you know, pages are kind of the end game. They're not really the parents of anything, which is why you can't make the changes trickle down to any of its children. So that makes sense. I'm going to change the access group to Sean Maxwell. So Sean is the only person who can go to his particular page. But you'll remember that Sean Maxwell, he had an approver set at the user level, meaning that he had to send his pages to level 6, and level 6 has to go to level 8, and that's all being overwritten by the fact that we have an approver sending to our, you know, kind of grand poobah admin guy right here. But remember, I want to be able to publish that stuff myself. I want to be able to update my own office hours when I want to, because that's super easy and I don't need to really consult anyone about that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this bypass approval option. And what this is saying, and I'm going to set it to Sean Maxwell. So what this says is that anyone who belongs to this group, which in this case is Sean, they are going to have all of their approval settings at the user level, anything that's being applied to the page, whatever, those are going to go erased. And whoever's inside this group can publish by themselves with no interference. So that's what I want in here. I want Sean to be able to get to his page and edit it all by himself. That's what we've given him the ability to do. We'll hit save. There we go. So now we've just kind of trickled it all the way down from the site level through several different directories right into the particular page. The final thing that I want to recommend, this is kind of unrelated for what we did right there, but related to access settings. Every directory inside of your site is going to have a file that creates your navigation. So, you know, if we just go into this index page, for example, over here, I've got this big old, well, that didn't really highlight very well. I've got this big old navigation that lists all of these people. You don't necessarily want everyone to be able to edit that navigation file because that could create a lot of problems. You know, you could have someone going in there and accidentally deleting a couple people's names. You could they could be adding someone's wrong name. They could be linking to the wrong place, et cetera, et cetera. The potential issues kind of go on and on. So another thing that we recommend is when it comes to side navigation files, go ahead and restrict those to someone who you know is going to be able to get it right. In this case, an administrator. Right now, the access group is biology department. Anyone who belongs to the bio department group, they're going to be able to edit that navigation file. If you change it to something like administrators only, that means that only level 9 and 10 admins are going to be able to edit that include file, which is probably what you want because they're the people who absolutely know what they're doing, because that's why they're administrators. Additionally, navigation files don't really need to have a lot of options in the WYSIWYG editor if you're editing them through a WYSIWYG. So we also recommend creating a custom toolbar called navigation and having just a couple real basic options. You know, have the ability to add links, which is essentially all a navigation is, and have the ability to create bulleted lists, which is usually how they're formatted. So you have a really restrictive toolbar called navigation. Give that to the side nav file and also restrict it to administrators only. We'll hit save right there. There we go. And I could, you know, go through here and start assigning that to every single side nav I have in my site, but, you know, showing it once is just enough for me right now. All right, so at this point, we have gone through at the site level, at the directory level, and at the specific page level, and we have adjusted all sorts of access settings. So what we're going to go ahead and do is now let's just kind of show how it works. I'm going to log out of my admin user, and I'm going to log in as Sean to show you what it looks like. So I'll log in as Sean. Right here, as we can see, now I'm logged in as good old Sean Maxwell. I'm going to go ahead and click on Contents. You'll notice that even though I'm a Level 4 user, I don't have access to the Assets list view. And the reason why I don't is because we made that access settings more restrictive. So only content contributors can get to the Asset Manager. As it's pretty obvious now, I'm not a content contributor. So I'll go to Content Pages. I can still access the root of my site, but you'll notice that most of these are blacked out. And that's because I can't get into them. The only two things I have access to are faculty and the Campus Life directory. So let me really quickly show you my faculty directory. I'm going to pop in there. And I am going to, you'll see that, I mean, if we had done this for real, I would have groups for all of these other sub-departments that I wouldn't actually be a member of. But you'll notice that I was not in the art department group, so I can't get inside the art directory. But since I'm part of the bio department, I can get into the biology directory. So I'm going to pop in here. You can see that I don't have access to the side nav, so I can't go in there and fiddle with it, but I can go to my Sean Maxwell page. You know, once again, in many of these situations, I would have groups of one for all of my faculty members, and I would prevent Sean from going in and fiddling with all of these other people's things, you know, playing pranks on them or something silly like that. But let's just go into my Sean Maxwell page. As you can see, now I'm here. I can go ahead and edit this if I need to. And if I go into my main content region, if you look into my WYSIWYG editor, you can see, look at how few options I have inside of my toolbar. And the reason for that is because I don't have, I assigned that level 4 toolbar to this user, so now I only have the level 4 options available to me. So, you know, I can start adding stuff, but, you know, I can't do things like view the full HTML source. I can't adjust the font size. I can't adjust the text color. All of those things are prevented from me to be able to use those. Okay, so we've got a question here from Brian. When it comes to access settings, he's asking if the folders blank out on the production view as well. Let's go ahead and show you. So I'll just back out of this really quickly. You'll notice here that I've got this tab. I'm viewing the staging server right now, but I can go to production. And if I click over to production, you'll see that I will not be blacked out from those folders. The way that you could potentially go around that is by restricting access to view the production server, which I believe you can do inside of site settings. But that's a good question, Brian. I'm going to see if I can follow up with a couple of people on our team about, you know, if you don't want users to look at the production server, but you still want to give them the ability to publish, I'll see what the best practice is for that. So since you registered for the Training Tuesday, I have your email address already, so I'm gonna, I'll email you after this is done once I hear back from some other guys on our team. But thank you for the question. That's a good one. I hadn't even thought about that too much. But okay, so essentially, I could go into faculty biology, so I'm a member of every group. I'm a member of the faculty group. I'm a member of the biology department group, and I'm a member of my own group of one, which enables me to get to my end game, which is the folder itself. I can go ahead and edit main content here if I wanted to. I can save it, and I could publish it all by myself. And if you had a question earlier, Matt, about how to publish immediately to the to social media, when you have this publish button here, you've got your little social media option. If I don't have anything in here, if I don't select a page from the drop-down menu, then I'm not going to make any sort of social media post. But if I do have something in here, such as in this example, OU Campus Training, and I have a wall post filled in, and I click Publish, it will make a post. But as you can see, the default behavior is to not have one filled in here, which would not make a social media post. And April, I got you. I will also email you the answer from Brian's question about restricting access to view the production server based upon your group. So there we go. So we have this example. I am able to publish this page all by myself. Let's show you what the workflow looks like. As you remember, I set up a 3-tiered workflow. Jason, I will email you as well. Thank you for that. So let's go and look at that 3-tiered workflow where level 4 has to go to level 6, level 6 has to go to level 8. So I'm here in the Campus Life directory. I'm just going to go ahead and edit one of these pages. Traditions, for example. It doesn't necessarily matter what it is. Say I've gone in here, and I'm just going to say Sean was here. He's a little vandal, just vandalizing all of my pages. So I'm right here. I've done this edit. What I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to save. You'll notice that I don't have the ability to publish by myself right now. I have to submit it. So I'm going to click Submit. You'll notice that it's sending it to my level 6 user, and this drop-down menu is grayed out. That's because I have enforced the approver, so I can't change it to somebody else. I'm just going to send a little subject that says, approve this, please. Okay, so we've got this. I'm going to click Submit. What happens is this page is going to be automatically checked out, checked back into the system and then checked out to the person I just sent it to. So no one else no third party can go in and fiddle with it in the meantime. So now I'm going to log out of my level 4 user. And I'm going to go ahead and go to my, level 6 user. So now I'm going to log in as my level 6. There we go. See, now I'm logged in as Erica here. And if you hover over content, you notice the first thing that's changed is that now I have access to the assets. So let's actually hop over there really quickly. I'm part of the content contributors group, or the content creators group, so that means I can make assets, because there we go. I'm going to go click New, but you'll notice that I don't have the ability to make forms or to make source code assets, and that's because I'm not an administrator, even though I have access to the assets. I'm not an admin. So we got this. Let's go back to my pages list view. So now I actually now have access to the images directory, and that's because, once again, I'm a content creator, so I can upload my content. If I click Upload here, you'll notice that I have allowed extensions. If I tried to upload a PDF, that wouldn't work. It would prevent me from doing so. So you can see that I've enforced that from working as well. Let's hop back into this. I still can't access documents because I'm still not an admin. I'm going to go to faculty really quick to show you what it looks like when I can now make new content, because now I have this new button. I can see my options here. I can make a new faculty member, but I can't make a new faculty department because, once again, we restricted those new sections, those new section templates to only be admins. So once again, I can make some templates, but I can't make all of the templates. We'll go back here. Now I'm in Campus Life. Now I've got this one, traditions.pcf. You can see that this one is pending my approval, so I have the ability to decline it and send it back to my level 4 user now. But, if I look over this and I forget the fact that Sean was here, didn't notice that or something like that, maybe now I can, okay, this looks good to go. Let's go ahead and approve it. You notice, once again, even though I'm approving it, I still have to submit it to someone else. So we're going step 3 here. Now I can see that it's sending to level 8. My Brandon Scheirman user here. I will have a little subject here. Maybe I'll say, I looked over this page from Sean. Things look good. I'll hit send. Now, once again, it's passed on to the next level in the rung, or the next level in the system. I don't really know where I was going for that metaphor. I'm going to log out one more time, and I'll log in as my level 8 user. Notice with a level 8, this is important, I have access to the recycle bin now, and that's because level 8s, by default, they have the ability to recycle files. This is something that other users don't. So this is just another piece of user permissions that's important to note. Level 4s and above can create assets. Level 5s and above can access the page properties of a page, and level 8s can, by default, delete files. Those are some really important permissions to know about. Before we move on, we have a question from Scott. They're asking, when selecting a reviewer to approve changes, does it have to be a specific user or can it be a group? At this point in the system, it does have to be a specific user. We do have plans in the future to include group approvals and things like that, but that is still something that is in the pipe right now. So for now, it has to be a specific user. Okay. So I'm going to go into Campus Life again. My traditions page is pending my approval now. I can go to it. And now we can see that I can decline once again, just as I had before, but now I have the ability to publish it. And you know, Sean was here, sure, we'll let the world know that Sean was there, just for now. So because I am approving a page and publishing something that was originally sent to me via an approval process, I have this approval tab when I click the publish button, and what this does is it just sends a message to all of the people who had submitted the page in the past and says, hey, you know, we published the page. Congratulations, it's done. So that's what we've got right here. It's just a little checkbox that says notify the participants, and then you can adjust the message. So if you have specific feedback for your users about, you know, why I published it or something, you could include this in the message. But at this point, I'm going to click publish, and then it will be available finally on the live production server. So there we go. We have shown a complex workflow. You can see that, you know, the same user who could publish their own faculty profile page also had the ability to submit in a 3-step workflow process as well. So now that we've kind of shown you how it works, I just want to re-emphasize the importance of using custom reports to kind of ensure that your access is configured accordingly. Typically, you know, I'm going to just log out and go back in as an admin here so I can show you here. Typically, once you have portioned out your access settings, you know, you've done your initial CSV, you've said, okay, these people need to go here, then you make your users, then you make your groups, then you assign your access settings. Typically, once you finish with that, the next step is to go to custom reports again and do another directories report. And this time, maybe check the access group, check the template group, maybe the approver, the bypass approval, any of those sort of things, and go ahead and click run. And what that's going to do is it's just going to allow you to go in and refresh your memory and make sure that you did do it correctly. So if you go in here, you can see that, you know, I want to make sure that all of the folders inside of my faculty directory, so all my subdirectories, are going to have the correct access groups applied to it. So I can see here with, you know, art, for example, my art department's assigned to it. Biology, it's got the bio department. If I had chemistry, chemistry department, computer science department, economics, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I can see who the approver is. I can see that I have the correct template groups applied. So inside my faculty directory, I want to make sure that my template group is for the faculty templates as opposed to, you know, your blog templates or something like that. And so on and so forth. So this is a good way for you to essentially just check your work. You can perform another export and just, you know, line them up next to each other. Have your first one, have your second one, and then be like, all right, this is great. We actually even have a really simple report called groups. And this is just a simple list that says, okay, well, hey, wait, who was in my bio department? I can go ahead and see that. So I can just sort by my member list to make sure that all of the right people got into the right groups in the first place and things along those lines. So just to kind of reiterate, custom reports, when it comes to access settings, they're your best friend. They're going to give you a lot of really useful information in a really convenient method, as opposed to trying to, click through all of your different directories and then look at all the drop-downs and confirm that you did things that way. Custom reports is way faster than doing anything the other method. So I feel like, that's, I know this is kind of a long Training Tuesday, but there's a lot to cover when it comes to access settings. So thank you all for sticking through with me on that. With that, that pretty much wraps up what I've got for you guys today. If you have any more questions, now's the time to put them out. If you do have any questions, we'll stay here for just a couple seconds, and we'll be taking it from there. Dennis is asking, can I get a copy of today's recording? You are in luck. We host these recordings on our Vimeo channel. It's vimeo.com/OUCampusTraining. We also post links to this training on our support site and also on the OCN. So you will be able to get the recording on all of those places. We caption all of our recordings now, closed captioning. We're trying to be accessible as well. So you can download the copy of this recording from our Vimeo channel as well as the captions if you need to. Oh, you know what? Let me just swap my presenter view there. All right, folks. Well, we got a couple more questions snuck in right at the end. We got one question that's asking, for workflow, how are approvers who are on vacation handled? I'm glad you asked. That's a great question. If you have an approver who's on vacation, you have a couple options. The most popular one of those options is to go in as an administrator and essentially approve it for them or reassign it to someone else. So say, for example, I'm logged in as an admin here. I'm going to go to my reports menu, and I have this report called Pending Approvals. It's going to give me a list of all of the files that have been sent to and from your users across your entire site. As long as you're an admin, you can see this. Say, for example, Jillian is sending this housing and dining page to Mary Cassidy. Mary Cassidy is in Tortuga for a week. Is Tortuga a real place? I don't even remember. I think it's from a Beach Boys song. Oh no, it's like not a Beach Boys song. It's like Captain Jack Sparrow. Anyways, Mary Cassidy's gone for a couple weeks. As an admin, what I can do is I can hover over this and click Reassign. And what that's going to give me the ability to do is I get to choose any of the other users that are in my system and send that housing and dining page to that person to do it kind of as a workaround for that particular instance. What you can also do is you can even cancel the workflow process altogether. You can go to the page, and even though it's locked by another user, me as an admin, I can go in and forcibly check the file in, which will cancel the workflow process. If I wanted to be the one to just like publish it out by myself, I'm like, fine, let's just publish it. I could cancel the workflow and then publish it by myself. So hopefully that answers your question. That's kind of the easiest way to do it. The other way to do it is you could not enforce a workflow, which would mean that users could send pages to, maybe they have a default approver, but they had the ability to choose to send the page to another approver. But from our standpoint, at least, it feels like it probably causes more problems than it really solves, because then there's nothing stopping someone from sending a page to a completely different user that doesn't even have access to that page in the first place. So that's probably not the best idea. The best way to do it is have a level 10 administrator go in to the pending approvals report and then just manually reassign that page to a different user. Second question, I was told that that pages can be created with password protection to allow a few people to access a page. How would this be? Probably the only way to do that to password protect pages would be through modifying your htaccess file on your production server. It's essentially a file that the server reads in order to say which users have the ability to access certain files on production. But in terms of password protecting something on the staging server, I'm honestly not quite sure how you would do that or if that's possible. So let me go ahead and once this is done, I'm going to follow up with a couple of people on our side to see if that's possible. And I'll see if I can follow up with you on that to give you a little bit more information. Because offhand, aside from editing your htaccess file, I don't know of a way to do that right now. And then Eric's got another question. Eric has asked, is there a bulk groups editing system that looks similar to the groups report screen? Kind of. So if we go to the setup menu, you have to be a level 10 administrator for this. If you go to setup groups, it's going to give you a list of all the groups that are in your system. This is where I was actually creating my groups in the first place. And I can go ahead and click on any of the groups that already exist. It's going to give me a list of all the users that are in my system and the group members, and I can adjust this as need be. So I can remove people, add people, etc. And I can also copy groups. So, inside of my faculty directory, if I want to make subgroups, corresponding to the computer science department or something like that, I can then remove who needs to be removed and add the people who need to be added, just like that. So hopefully that answers your question there, Eric. Okay. Well, if there are any more last-minute questions, absolutely post them in here. But if I don't hear anything in the next couple seconds, I think that will wrap up this month's Training Tuesday session. So, with that, our next Training Tuesday is going to be held on June 28th, 2016. This will be same time, same place, 11 a.m. Pacific time, 2 p.m. Eastern. And we'll see you all then. We'll be posting more information about what the next month's topic is on the OCN, and we'll also send out our standard announcement email. As long as you're an OCN member, you'll get that. And we'll also post it on our support site as well as the registration link. So with that, everyone, thank you all for your attention. I know this is an extremely long Training Tuesday. Thank you all for sticking with me. I hope this answered a lot of your questions and you took away some really good best practices about the ever-important concept of access and workflow in OU Campus. If you have more questions, as always, we're always a resource here for you. If you have more questions about access and workflow from here on out, post on the OCN. We make an OCN event page for every Training Tuesday, so if you have more questions about that that we didn't answer here today, go ahead and post them there, and I will answer them to the best of my abilities as soon as I can. With that, everyone, thank you guys so much, and we'll see you next month.